Part of the process in choosing a safari operator is that at some point, you'll need to shortlist a number of safari companies and ask them for a quotation. Now, when asking them for a quotation, you usually would need to accompany it with a number of questions so that you can tell them what you're looking for and so that they can understand your unique needs for that safari, so that they can include that in the quotation as they give you what it's going to cost to go on that safari. Now, if you're interested to figure out how much a safari costs, I've done a video about that and you can check that out there. Actually, it's right there. And you can try and see like what's the average cost of an African safari. However, this is now the question that you're going to be asking about your tour to that tour operator. Now, the first question that you need to ask is how big is the group size? Now, group size matters a lot. The reason for this is most African safaris are not exclusive. The ones that are usually slightly more expensive. And so if you're going to be having a safari with other people, you want to know how many of those people there are going to be. Because if it's a very large group of people, let's say it's more than like 5 or 6, it may actually affect the quality of your own safari because you do not know how loud or rowdy these guys are going to be, what kind of environment they're going to create for you, whether they are themselves going to come as a group and you're going to be the only person who is excluded from that group in that vehicle. And so there are a number of things that get thrown off if you are going to be in a big group of people compared to if you're going to be just a few of you. Now, consider that if you're going to be a smaller group, the safari may be more expensive, and it actually becomes way more expensive if you're going to be just yourself. Now, one thing that helps with this is that you book the safari as a big group of people, let's say like 6 people, and this means that all of you are going to be familiar with each other. That reduces the risk of stranger danger to a small amount compared to if you're going just alone. But most of the times this may not be feasible, so that's a really important question to ask. How big is a group? Question number 2 is, are there any age limits to your safari? Now, most safaris usually restrict how old their tourists, so the people who are going to be in their tour are going to be. And there are some who do not have this restriction, so they're able to keep it to a small number. Now, consider this. If you're going to be going with a child, not even yourself, but someone in the van you're going to be in is going to be coming with a child. Now, that child may become cranky. They may become a bit impatient. They may want to probably go to the loo or something like that. And in the middle of your drive, if they get that impatient and become rowdy and probably become very impatient, you may have to cut short your safari drive for that day so that the child can go back home. Now, that's something you probably want to consider because if you're going to be having a toddler or a child in your safari, it is going to affect how good your safari experience is going to be. So that's something for you to consider because it might affect the quality of your safari. The second thing that you need to think about within this is, even if you're not the one who is going with that child, someone else might. And so even if you are not the one going with the child, please ask how many or whether there are any age restrictions and the possibility of any children coming with you on that safari. Question number 3 you need to ask is, how many game drives are you going to be doing per day and how long are those game drives going to be? Now, this question is a really important one because sometimes they may have limits on how long a safari drive would be that would be affected by a number of things, one of which may be let's say mileage, that we cannot go past this many miles. Now, it's understandable because they probably don't want to spend that much on fuel. They are running a business. And so one of the things that they will be considering is they don't want to probably go for too long and that affect their cost in that way. Now, it's important to ask whether they have any limits on mileage, how many drives you're going to be doing, the average length of that safari, how many miles on average do they have, and any restrictions they have there. If you're going to go with a company that is really stingy on their miles, you may probably still go to Africa but not have the best of experiences because you did not spend that much time out there on safari. Now, most companies would offer 2 game drives, one in the morning and one in the evening. And the reason for this is that animals during the day are not normally very active, and so you may find it a bit more difficult to find animals during the day. And so very early in the morning, very late, well, let's say like 6 a.m. to around 10 a.m. and then from around like 3 p.m. to around 6 p.m. That's usually that's averagely like what is expected. So find out whether that's what they offer. Just ask them how many tour drives they have and how long they last. The third thing you need to ask is what's the kind of accommodation you're going to be in. Now, usually this would be within the quotation, but it's important for you to ask because it may not be, they may need to give you a bit more details. Ask them what's the star rating on the place. Could they send you pictures of that hotel, the kind of accommodation? Send you pictures of the actual room that you are paying for, because a hotel might have like very high presidential suites, but you're probably paying for a tented camp which is in the same area. So ask them for pictures of the exact room you're going to be in so that you know what you're expecting and what you're paying for. Also important to ask is where is that accommodation within in the proximity of the national park that you're going to be in. The reason for this is sometimes there are parks that do not have like lodges within, or some that do have lodges within, but the one you're spending the night in is not one of them. And so the problem with this is that you're going to be coming into the park a bit later in the morning, probably like at around 7 or 8, and you'll miss some of the most prime viewing opportunities if your lodge is outside of the national park. However, if your lodge is within the national park, you'll just get up, just start doing, immediately you get out of the gate of that lodge or that camp, you're going to be in the national park and you can start seeing animals. So you have an advantage if the location of the accommodation is within the national park. So that's something important to find out. Is it located within the national park or not? Now, the other thing you need to ask is that are there exclusions? What you're paying for, is there an exclusion to it? An exclusion in the sense that, is there something else you need to pay? Are there fees that are extra on top of what they're quoting you? Now, some of the things that usually would be extras would be like drinks. That meals come as part of the package, probably a full board meal, but the drinks like alcoholic beverages, probably extra drinks, would come at an extra cost. Now, that's something you need to ask ahead of time, because if you're planning to if you're thinking that that's going to be included and it's not, and you're not putting that in your budget, it may affect the quality of your safari. So find that out and you'll be able to plan accordingly. The next thing you need to ask is, what are the meals that are going to be provided? Could they give you a menu of what kind of meals are available? This is especially true if, let's say, you have special requirements. Let's say you're diabetic or something like that. You need to know whether these guys are going to whether they have that kind of restriction. Sorry, that was my alarm. So the question would be whether they have any restrictions on any restrictions on their food, whether their food is going to be that consistent. Do they have any restrictions on food? What kind of menu is there? Is there a large variety? Something important to ask. Now, the seventh thing you need to ask is that they provide you with pictures of their safari vehicles with their brand on it. Now, the reason why this is important, asking for the pictures of their safari vehicles with their brand on it, it means that those are actually their vehicles. Now, a number of occasions where safari companies tell you they offer safaris, but they actually give you off to another safari company. Those are a possibility, and those exist. And so you do not want to be handed over to a company that you're not already familiar with. So it's important that you ask them, are these their vehicles? Are these vehicles that they actually have? Do they own them? And usually they will tell you yes, but the one way that you can tell for yourself is if they have their branding on them. If they are branded with their company like logo, then you know that those are their vehicles. So it's important to ask that. It's also good to know like what quality of how old are their vehicles, and you'll be able to see through the pictures how old the vehicles are. And it's important to ask that, is this the kind of vehicle, is this the exact kind of vehicle that I'm going to be having on my safari drive? Because they may take pictures of their newest vehicles but give you an older vehicle, and this is going to definitely affect how your safari is going to go if you're going to get an older vehicle. So ask them, is this the actual vehicle that I'm going to be using? And like confirm, send me pictures of the kind of vehicle I'm going to be using, and is this the actual vehicle that I'm going to be using? So something important to ask. So the final thing is you need to ask for independent reviews. Ask them whether they have any independent reviews that they can share with you. So links to independent review sites like Trustpilot or probably TripAdvisor, of people who have reviewed them that are not within their own site, because it's very easy to fabricate, obviously, but it's much easier, much harder, I mean, to fabricate things if that review was on somewhere like TripAdvisor or Trustpilot. So ask them for those, a link for that, so that you can be able to establish whether this company is good enough. Now, once you've asked all of those questions, the reply you get, let's say you're asking multiple, like let's say five different, five different companies, the answer you get is going to help you figure out, okay, is this a company that I truly want to deal with? And it will help you rank order based on the answers that you get from these companies. It will help you figure out which of them is safer to go with. Now, one of the things you're trying to manage is risk, because you do not want to find yourself in a bad situation when going with a safari company that you did not ask enough questions of. And so asking all of these questions will help you eliminate guys who are not probably very serious, and will help you stay and pick companies that are least risky to you, and that if they go off what they had originally promised, you have written evidence on, here's what you had promised, give me what I had promised, what you promised to give. Now, I want to end by saying that African safaris are the kind that you get what you pay for. So if you're paying a certain amount of money, you would get value for that. If you're paying higher, you would get value for that. But it's important that you ask the right questions so that you are able to know, you're able to establish whether you're being overcharged or not. I hope those tips were useful. If you're interested in going for an African safari, I've created a longer video that is going to take you step by step on the things that you need to do when choosing a safari company. This is a video that alludes a bit to what I'm talking about in that video. And so if you're interested in that, check out that video there. And until next time, keep traveling.